Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our last artist talk of the year. My name is Hannah, and I'm the Student Space Gallery Manager. And my role has been to oversee the virtual exhibitions that have been happening this year. Today, I'm joined by two amazing artists who will be presenting their work that was exhibited in our virtual gallery. Yeah, before we start, I'd like to remind everyone who has the Mica app to check in. There will be a raffle at the end of the year. And let me actually share my screen again for those who have the app. Yeah, if we'll just take a few seconds here so people can check in. Okay. I'll also drop the link to this in the chat for those who missed it. So yeah, okay. Susan, would you like to go ahead and share your screen?
Yeah, for sure. Okay. There we go. And is that visible? Okay, so I guess this is my my page on the Student Space Gallery. Yeah, so equivocal systems. Honestly, when I submitted my show, it changed a lot because of COVID. So a lot of of my material was switched around. So like purposefully, but changed around. Yeah, because of just like this jumble of time. But yeah, so a lot of my work deals with like building ecosystems, and I'll just like go through this really slowly, and I can like touch on each piece, I guess, as well. Building ecosystems and like using anthropomorphic creatures and a bit of like an uncanny kind of like visuals with those creatures. So a lot of like my work begins with kind of viewing like real life situations with like the scope of almost like I'm filming an Animal Planet episode. I'll kind of go into that, but if you've like I'm sure if like some of you have seen Animal Planet, you kind of like look at it as like you're a scientist and you're looking at like animals or humans or things like going about their day, and they kind of talk about things very objectively, and they sorry, I'm a little nervous right now too because I've been with just getting on this call. So but they talk about things like really objectively, and say for an example, oh, like an antelope is going by. They tend to like I think in particular like American nature shows as well add so much like excitement and like goriness to like a lot of the things that are like happen with animals. So it's like objective but kind of like exciting. So they'll show an ant or some kind of creature and they'll be like it's devouring its prey, it's doing all these like crazy things. And we tend to go throughout our days and we find things like very mundane, but you know, like a lot of artists I believe like enjoy people watching, and they don't see them as just like people going by. They kind of like imagine them going through like all these just in, you know, like into what conversations are they having, or like what kind of lives do lives do these people have, and all these things. So I kind of like to take oftentimes like conversations I have people and make like really intense or abstracted visualizations of those conversations and all those things. And I think they need to be always in the context of an ecosystem, because there's no such thing as like a single event or a single like object of anything happening. There's always like an ecosystem within every interaction. So a lot of my pieces are like they're talking about like very different things. And I can go through some of them, but say like this one here with the black and white and charcoal, I was making I not shown here, but I have other pieces as well that I was dealing with like charcoal and drawing like I guess depictions of kind of like what a heaven would be. I was thinking a lot about like people's uh, religions and a lot of the like these nirvanas and like heavens that like people create. And there's no I guess there's never any like, you know, decided like vision of heaven. There's always like there's so many like things in it. I think in the Jewish, I'm actually Jewish, so I know more about like Jewish heaven. But uh in Jewish heaven it's like your people are all in peace and you're with family, and God has this the Leviathan beast that and we apparently people go to heaven and they eat the meat of this like fish beast, and it's supposed to taste like absolutely delicious, and that's like the food of that world. I remember reading that and I was like, wow, that's just crazy but really beautiful, but also just crazy. So I take inspiration from all those things, and I kind of like, wow, like these crazy heavens we create, I'm gonna like kind of try to illustrate this, a mixture of those and like what I've seen of like what people think is like, you know, beautiful or idealized. Um, yeah, so that's that piece. Some of these pieces I'm like a little, a little, don't have great memory for some of like the deeper like meanings I've had for like individual things. A lot of them are just built on conversations and um, I guess like individual experiences. And then a lot of my work too, because it's like, you know, dependent on like conversations or like specific events. I've like some of my work has taken more like political routes, and like others have like taken more just like abstract routes of like day to day. Like this piece was about being a student and being also like watching. I think like with this piece, I like learned a lot of the history of I believe it was the dorm halls, and it was like a hospital. And I learned a lot of like the kind of, I wouldn't say gruesome, but like unfortunate things about the it was the first women's hospital, I believe. Yeah, no, second. It was the second women's hospital in the nation. There's of course, you know, like early hospitals are a little they tend to be a little tragic back in the day. So there was a lot of like reading in like the mica not the mica the Maryland archives. Learned a lot about the hospital and all these like tragic things that would happen back then. And a lot of the articles and a lot of the writing in the archives were kind of like really, it was a mixture of things. It was like whitewashing everything as well, and like kind of just like feeding into like this idealized like, I believe it was in like, it was from the late 1800s to 50s, this idealized version of like what this hospital was and the care it was giving women. But it was like it was a little twisted, and it was all, you know, like though the care was for women, it was like clearly written, and like a lot of the doctors were like they were all men, of course. Like there was just so many things that were like very twisted about it. um and like this was like the vision of like a nurse and being in kind of like the future day of like a student dorm, and kind of seeing like some of the flaws and like the one has, and seeing like the position they have, they see the flaws that they were giving like the people around, like for this case a nurse, like giving the care its patients, it was giving like flawed care. And you know, as a student we like, it's a little hard to come to like a new city, and then you end up learning like some of the things of like Baltimore is a bit of like a rough city, and it's very hard to sometimes see like some of the care that I guess happens in this city. I'm not wording this well but like coming to very like, I guess also we have like a very whitewashed school and a very idealized school, and it's like a little hard to kind of like come here and also want an education and then see like some of the things that you like take part in but you also want to fix. So that's that piece. A lot of these also are like abstract, and some of them are a little older that I don't have like a great memories of like again the details of these pieces. um yeah, I the last one here is actually like a self-portrait. I was like more experimenting with kind of like narrowing down my subject down. I don't make self-portraits, and though I'm a very like figurative painter clearly. So this was like an experiment of like clear like a lot of my pieces are trying to look outward, and I was trying to like make a more of a piece that looked at my ecosystem. Like I was painting my room, I was drawing my room and drawing like what I imagined someone would be looking at me, and then also like how I see my room and like other things around me. Yeah, so I don't know how long it's been, but I think that's like pretty much my artist talk and like descriptions of what I could do.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you.
Susan, if you want to leave your Instagram handle, or I've already
Oh,
left the
yeah.
link to this page in the chat, but yeah, go ahead and share that.
For sure. So my Instagram is at Lil_Susie_Uzi, and my website is like under works right now, but it'll be in my Instagram soon, and it is susankalvarez.com. So that'll be up soon, but I'm still I'm like working on it a little bit right now. Yeah, thank you.
Great, thank you. And again, if anyone has questions for Susan, please leave them in the chat so we can go over them at the end. Yeah.
And then shall I pause, share, stop share? There we go.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Next up is Lila. If you want to go and share your screen.
Yeah. Let's see. So this is my presentation. My name is Lila. I'm a 22-year-old artist and musician from New Jersey. Next week, I graduate from MICA as a GFA major with a sound concentration. And besides art, I enjoy hiking in the woods and growing lots of plants. I have some pictures of me in the woods and a picture of some of my plants I was growing last fall. This is my artist statement. To sum it up, my art explores cyclical iterations, states of consciousness, digital life, and the spiritual magic of the universe. And I also explore the divine feminine and masculine, celebration and loss, and enchantment and possession. These are some of my older works that were actually not in the show, but I wanted to show them as sort of like a build up to my piece that was in the Student Space Gallery. So these are some of my earlier works with blacklight. I really enjoy working with blacklight painting. The two on the left are quite large, I would say like 5 or 6 feet long, and the one on the right is a little bit smaller, maybe like 2 feet high. So yeah, those are some earlier blacklight works. And then this is my piece called The Pool that was in the exhibition. Um, this piece was a really interesting journey because I started working on it in the Fred Lazarus Center in January and February of 2020. And then because of the shutdown, the Lazarus Center closed in March of 2020, and I actually had to bring this piece, which is 9 feet by 16 feet, so it's a complete wall size painting. I had to bring it home to my apartment and complete it there. For a while, it was in a hallway. So I was painting and I couldn't even see the whole piece at once because the hallway like dispersed into separate rooms. And then eventually my roommate moved out and I was able to make his room into my studio and able to see the full painting again by the time I finished it and able to document it with this photo. Here I have sort of some explanation of what I was thinking. It's a large scale painting using ink, highlighter, and blacklight activated acrylic. The universe I portray consists of two mirrored sides with a central pool of water that is bordered by the sun and the moon. On the left side, um Sorry. On the left side, I portrayed the moon world. The moon overlooks all the entities that reside there. Their world is dark and moonly. They experience feelings like lethargy, lack of motivation, addiction, and apathy. But, however, by the light of the stars, they engage in moonly activities like worship, dance, makeup, healing, and witchcraft. So that is this left side of the painting here is the moon side. And then on the sun side, the creatures are I was thinking sort of the opposite. of what the moonly creatures are. So they're inquisitive and bright, they seek knowledge and to understand the universe. But this leads them to feel hyper anxious and overwhelmed, but also full of spontaneity and life. And on the sun side, I really wanted to emphasize the close watch of time passing. So, oops. So I sort of have this large clock watching over the whole side because I wanted to emphasize that these creatures pay very close attention to time passing. And then in the middle, I have a central pool of water, which I felt as a place where the creatures could find peace and rest. It's sort of a place of centralness between the sun and the moon. I have a singular moth sitting in there. This next piece is called Protection Magic. I painted it out of paint marker, acrylic, and gems and glitter glue on whiteboard. I painted it with embedded sigils as a mural in my friend's bedroom with magic to protect her and watch over her in her space. And she was there actually as I was painting it, so I would sort of paint a few lines and she would tell me what creature she felt was manifesting out of the paint. Like she'd be like, oh, that looks like a dog or that looks like a snake. And that is how the creatures in the painting came to be sort of from my friend's imagination who was watching me paint it. And I have some close ups of the painting here. Next, I have two digital pieces. These were based on social media, or not social media, but website platforms. The left is based on Venmo, a Venmo transaction, and the right is based on this anonymous commenting. And the right one is in the Student Space Gallery show, but it was based on an anonymous commenting app called thiscrush.com. I also did a code sharing experiment where I hung these barcodes that are on the right here up around Baltimore City, and I wanted to hang them. They all lead to my website, which I will link when I'm done presenting in the chat. But I wanted to explore information sharing without social media, so sort of like analog information spreading and code spreading. So I hung them around the city, and I have some photos of some places that I hung them in Baltimore. This next series of pieces is called Collages for the Fae, and I made them to communicate with the realm of the fairies, with a focus on digital sexuality and feminine power, and all of the barcodes incorporated in the pieces also lead to my website. So I have this first collage here, which is made out of magazines, manga, paint marker, gesso, glitter glue, candle wax, inkjet prints, acrylic paint, Elmer's glue. I said glitter glue twice, I think, and small plastic gems and resin on paper. So that is my first collage. Here is the other collage. This one is the one that incorporates some of the barcodes. And here are some close ups of the larger collage. Moving on to my music practice, here is a summary of my previous albums that led me up to my album that I created for this show and for a senior thesis. So I started making music on SoundCloud in my sophomore year at Mica. I used Ableton Live to edit my music, and I created 3 albums just on SoundCloud. And then I joined the record label Tangy Citrus Records, um, for which I created a Bandcamp compilation of the last 3 albums, which is what you see on the right here. And then for my senior thesis, I created an album called Digitalia, which I would describe as a musical journey exploring dance, digital identity, love, change, plant medicine, layering, ambience, and meditation. And I have the track list here. So this was a very exciting project for me because it was my first album with a cross-platform release, including Spotify and Apple Music. It was my first time working with mastering personnel and a distributor. So in March 2021, I worked with a mastering professional to create a fully mastered version of the song, and I met with him and really worked with him on each individual song. I used Steve Turnage through Ultraviolet Studios, and a lot of people don't realize these sort of steps that go into creating an album, but they're just as important as creating the actual music itself. And then in April, I submitted my work for distribution through CD Baby, where I applied for royalties and I applied for a cross platform release on all major streaming platforms, which is another step that I figured I wanted to talk about because it's important to know how much work goes into sort of the back end of things when producing music. And then for my release, I sort of showcased my different platforms that I released it on. I would say that the most exciting platform for me to release on was definitely Spotify because that is what I use to listen to music. So it made seeing my name as a verified artist on Spotify. It made me really excited and made me feel like a real musician. Of course, I released it on my SoundCloud account as I did my other albums, and then my favorite platform to release music on is Bandcamp because as you can see, you can set your own digital album price, and it also just like the website offers a lot more individual personalization. I could really design my web page to look how I wanted, which leads me into my website. Which I consider a digital installation. I like to incorporate lots of GIFs and sort of old style internet pictures. I'm really inspired by the early 2000s and websites like Webkins, girlsgogames.com, Cool Math Games, lots of websites from the 2000s. I'm really inspired by when creating my website because I wanted to create feelings of nostalgia and sort of like that feeling when you're like a child scrolling on the internet looking through all the little gaming websites, and I actually have some curated games on my website as well. So I will put that link below in the chat. Um, Here are all of my, I'm going to copy and paste this and put it in the chat for you guys, but here are all of my links to where you can listen to my album and find all of my other work on my website and my Instagram. And thank you for listening to my presentation. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now.
Thank you. Let me share my screen quick. Again, if anyone has questions for either of these artists, please leave them in the chat. All right, so I have a few questions prepared for today. We can each take turns answering. So how was the experience of arranging a virtual exhibition for you guys? I know Susan has already mentioned like how COVID has affected her work, but yeah, if you guys want to like talk about like this overall experience, yeah.
Well, I guess like there was a lot of moving around, which I'm sure we all experienced a lot of, and there was like times I didn't have my computer handy, so just like getting a hold of like my files and making sure it was organized and all that was a bit of a pain. But I definitely, for the past like couple months, I've become a lot more like virtually organized, I guess. Put like a lot of value in where my documents are.
Yeah, I would say the same. I'm definitely more organized virtually now. It's almost like my virtual space is like a real space at this point. And I would say also, yeah, I work very large, so moving around has definitely affected my practice and led me more towards working with music recently than painting.
Great, thank you. Okay, so how has your practice changed over time, like beyond just COVID, like pre-COVID times? And if you have any like recent work you guys want to talk about?
Okay, well, I'm a sculpture major, so that was I like agree with Lila. It's not really an option right now, but so like for this show and also like I moved things around and a lot of my other things are sculptural, but preferably it was it was more preferable to see those things in person, though I did want to include one sculpture. Um, but yeah, obviously a lot more painting now. And I've just been working on like more like smaller, quick projects and like things that I guess are like assemblable. So I'm working with like if I do sculpture, it's things that can be like taken down and like put back up and hopefully put back up in Baltimore so I can like kind of work on making long-term complex sculptures or installations.
Yeah, as I was saying, I before for the other question, my practice has changed over time because I've been a lot more into making music recently because music I can kind of take it with me anywhere on my laptop. So it's a very COVID friendly practice. But throughout the years, I've just become more and more interested in music, especially because I declared my concentration as a sound concentration. And then recently, I've honestly just been working on all my finals for mica recently. But for the summer, I have plans to possibly release a music video for one of the tracks on the album, Shipping Fees.
Great, thank you. Um, so the last question for this panel part is, what are some takeaways from your mica experience? I know, Susan, you're not done with your mica experience yet, but just from like so far, like what have you gained? And if you have any advice for rising sophomores and juniors?
I think Micah got me a lot more experimental with material. Like I think before I was very attached to like long-term materials or materials that were, I guess, like very traditional. And now I'm a lot less traditional. And definitely like also being like a sculpture major, like I learned a lot of mediums. So that just I added a lot of things to the tool set. And I guess like advice, like I'd say there's only so much, even though I think mica is like such a wonderfully conceptual institution, I think it's important that no one can really build your work conceptually other than yourself. So I think a lot of value should be put on the very physical and like technical things you learn at school, which is I put a lot of value on that.
Great, thanks. Lila?
Yeah, my advice for rising sophomores and juniors would be to just do what you love because this is really your opportunity to like, I mean, at least for me, it was the opportunity to really dive into work that I love making, especially with senior thesis, having so much freedom to make my own work. It's been really nice, yeah, to be able to have that freedom and be able to really explore myself in my work.
Cool, thank you. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. Okay. So we have a question from Lauren. What from nature inspires you? Anyone want to take a first stab at this?
I feel like this is very geared toward your work because I feel like in your work there's a lot more plant matter and things. Um, I guess I'm answering first though. Okay, so
Sorry.
sorry, it's whatever. But what inspires me through my work? I guess like I mean I mentioned Animal Planet. I watch a lot of like other than like going outside, but like going on walks and stuff. I watch a lot of like just like videos of fish and like animals and stuff. And I guess like watching like how people view those animals and like how those and just like how videos represent like nature and all that. So I think I'm very inspired by fish and been very inspired by Animal Planet.
I'm very inspired by plants and sort of I have this booklet that it's like this booklet of all the different types of leaves in on like the East Coast and I like to take it outside and like see if I can match the leaves to like different trees. So I like different leaf shapes, I would say is something that I've been interested recently that is nature related.
Great, thank you. There was another question in the chat. I think this is for you, Lila. Fred would like to learn more about Faye and what that means.
The Fae I sort of picture as like small fairy-like creatures, very powerful, very feminine entities, sort of like trickster spirits. Yeah.
Great. And another question for you. What was your favorite album that you've produced from Jam?
I saw that and I've been thinking about it since it was asked. I would have to say Digitalia, my most recent album, because it was my first time working with a collaborator, Meg Spector, and I really enjoyed working with her to produce a song together as friends. So, and also just like the experience of putting it on Spotify and like having it as my professional discography. Yeah, I would say Digitalia.
Cool. I actually have a few questions prepared on the side over here. Um, I know this might feel a bit repetitive, but in general, in a broader sense, what are some of your sources of inspiration for like all of your work?
Um, well, I guess like visually, I'm really inspired by like old cartoons and like I guess the era of like very like lowbrow cartoons like Ren and Stimpy and like Flapjack. Also just SpongeBob too. Like like when they go into like the hyper realistic detailed like disgusting visuals. I was always like a really big fan of that and the surreal aspects of those cartoons and also just a lot of the artists that I guess a lot of the artists that like were a part of the lowbrow or like movement were like even before those cartoons. So I guess like artists like Peter Saul, Philip Guston, all those like I guess R Crumb, like those kind of artists, and a lot of and like anime too, like Junji Ito and like a lot of horror mangas. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say very inspired by early 2000s culture and like the culture I was surrounded by growing up. I was getting into that a little bit in my presentation, like early websites and early internet aesthetics. And that sort of combined with the natural world is I feel like where my work falls. So yeah, like I grew up in the woodlands, in the forest in New Jersey, so I'm always thinking about the forest and the woods and forest ecosystems in my work as well.
Cool. Thanks for sharing. What are some like specific like tools you guys like to work with? Like, are there specific software or I know you guys have mentioned like the medium you guys have been working with, but like any favorites at the moment?
I've like fallen back on like more traditional stuff for painting, like acrylic, but then I guess like acrylic allows for you to like just put garbage into things and like build up. So that's like, that's a really nice part of it. Also, it's just super mobile. Like you can't oil paint everywhere. Um, I'm like a big fan of right now paper clays. I like paper clays, and I've been experimenting with like air dry clays because I really like ceramics. But again, like I don't have a kiln. I can't do that just anywhere. So yeah, experimenting with a lot of like air clays and being able to make a lot of like smaller figurines, and for building larger sculptures, I I like it's not like paper mache, but I like to like layer. I like tape strips of paper to make like 3D forms, and like a lot of times there'll be like kind of like a armature inside. And I'm a big fan of that. And I'm looking right now into like Mardi Gras techniques of like how they build those like crazy beautiful floats that are pretty like partially temporary, but like they're so grand and like intense. And also a lot of them have like kind of like the almost like a surreal quality too, because they're just so like large and yeah, are large and able their ability to move around, like they get carting them through the streets, things like that.
Um, yeah, I've always been really interested in painting with things that experiment with lighting. So I use a lot of black light paint because I'm really into like LED lights and experimental lighting. I have this changeable light right here. So yeah, I'm really interested in combining painting with experimental lighting and LED lights.
Great. And I know I've asked you guys like what your takeaways are from your mica experience. I know Lila, you mentioned that you were planning on working on another album. But just in general, maybe Lila for you post graduation, maybe Susan for you the next year, what are some future goals that you have in mind right now?
Um, I think like even going into mica, like I had like this idea for me was like, oh, I know what my thesis is gonna be kind of, but like I don't really I don't really care about like thesis so much as like, you have like a goal of like making something specific and you just kind of like hope like, oh, like either I'll do it like next year or I'll do this, like I'll set a time for it. But I've been wanting so badly to make like a very intense installation that's like just like my painting, so like a very physical representation of like a painting where you can walk through it, and there's a lot of like just like a lot of like creatures, and it'll be like very immersive and have using every medium, and like also I want to one day maybe add like animatronics like pull some like Disney World kind of like BS in it. That's like that's a very clear goal that I've had for kind of a long time, and which is also why I'm working like in assembling, making pieces that can assemble so that I can like put all my things together and like mesh them.
Great.
Um, I have been working very large with my paintings for a couple years, so I really want to explore making some smaller works that I could possibly make into prints and sell. And I also haven't made any t-shirts of my work in a while, so I was thinking maybe this summer of printing my album art or something onto t-shirts, as well as I was talking about it before, but I'm really excited to possibly be working on a music video this summer for my one shot song Shipping Fees.
Great. Cool. That was it. Let me just give me 1 second. I'd like to share our virtual gallery real quick. Um, okay. Can everyone see my screen? Okay. So yeah, to our guests here, you guys can view Lila's and Susan's work here. We also have our past virtual exhibitions all on this site. And yeah, we will also have a recording of this talk uploaded here for those who weren't able to make it today. We also have it might be easier to view work on our Instagram account. We have all of the individual pieces uploaded here as well. So please go and take a look. And just a few last announcements before we end. This was our last virtual artist talk of the year. Next year, mica is hoping to have galleries in person. We do have artists lined up for in-person shows. So please keep an eye out for those. And I think that's it. Yeah, do you guys have anything else you guys wanted to say?
I don't think so.
Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, thank you.
This was really fun.
Yeah, thank you everyone for joining us on a Wednesday night. Yeah, and this will be, the recording will be uploaded on our site. So great. All right, everyone have a good evening. And we'll see you next semester.
Yeah,
Bye.
good
Thank
night.
you.